Hello, welcome again to another video in the series on understanding insurance claims. Today we're going to look at the definition of an insured under your typical automobile policy. Granted, a lot of insurance policies will vary somewhat in the definitions as far as what they call a particular person, but by and large they're all intended to cover certain people. And that's one of the things you have to look at in an insurance policy. Who is intended to be covered? You have the named insured. The named insured is the one whose name appears in the declaration page, which is the page that it will list the name of the insured, the address of the insured, the policy dates, the policy numbers, the agent's name, and so forth. Basic policy information. Now, if the policy is written in the name of John Jones and he is married, it may not list his spouse, Carolyn Jones. But if they are members of the same household, then she's also considered a named insured. But for instance, what if that spouse, for some reason, the named insured and the spouse separate? They no longer live in the same household. What would be the effect on the policy, the effect on coverage if that person is no longer a member of the household? Some policies will give like 90 days. If they're, even though they're separated for 90 days, that person is still considered to be a named insured. Some policies will say after or at the time the policy period lapses, at the end of that particular policy period, if they're still separated, then that spouse who is not named on the policy is no longer a named insured. Then you have things like family members. And some policies will refer to them differently, but they're normally people that are related by blood, adoption, foster children, wards, that are members of your household. But so you can see that the definition for insured is expanded somewhat. Then but they're not named insureds, but they are family members who are insured under the policy. For instance, what if you have a spouse who is in the military and they're deployed for a year in another country? What is their status when it comes to whether or not they're insured under the policy? Typically, your courts in situations like that are going to be very liberal on as far as construing who is an insured and who is not. But these are all at all times you need to check with your agent and let the agent know the status of the people in your family who may or may not still qualify as insureds. You can't give the agent too much information, because they need information in order to determine whether or not this person will still qualify as an insured. And then you have the question of an emancipated child. An emancipated child is one who has not reached the age of majority. In some states that's 18 years. In some states it's 21 years. But they are a minor in that particular state. But maybe they are married. They have another home that they are responsible for. They have a job. They operate independently and out from under the responsibility of their parents. Well, they're emancipated, even though they may have been on the policy as an insured when the policy was written, but in the interim period, they are no longer a member of that household. And so, consequently, they are no longer one of your insureds. So those are kinds of situations that will affect who is an insured and who is not an insured. Typically, a child away from school who is not emancipated is still considered to be a member of that household and would qualify for coverage under the insurance policy. So those are some basic things as far as what you need to do in order to understand who's covered in your policy and who's not covered. And if you have questions, please contact your agent so that those questions can be answered prior to any accident that may occur. In part 2, we'll look at a little differently. We'll look at how the insureds differ under the various coverages of your policy. There are some subtle changes, but we'll look at that in video number 2, part number 2. So again, I thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks a lot.